There we go.
Yay!
All right. Aloha, everyone.
Aloha! Woo! Super excited.
And since you guys are here early,
The only thing, sweetie, is that my screen hasn't updated.
ah, oh, uh,
Yay, you see us? Awesome!
refresh your screen for a second. Sorry.
Awesome. I have my own laptop this time,
There we
so
go.
I can actually type and all of that good stuff. How's everybody doing? And I love that we have the chat feature going. It's really, really awesome. So we just thought we'd come early and hang out with you guys. Can you believe we totally broke YouTube? All of the ukulele players, we just completely took over, and I guess that, it just couldn't handle it. Worldwide.
All right. Now, I think during testing a couple of days ago, everything was sounding okay. But how is the volume and how's everything kind of looking at the moment? Any issues?
Oh, good. Oh, man. Yay.
Awesome.
Glad everything is sounding very good. Thank you guys so much for letting us know.
Now, kind of the game plan. Oh, awesome.
Oh my gosh, hi Mona.
Some of the things that we're going to be going over today. So the whole game plan for today. We'll start off kind of playing through a song, learning some variations on that song, and then kind of deep dive into practicing, like how to practice, what are you looking, the goals of practicing, all the little things that we do to make our time the most efficient. Now again, we don't officially start for another 8 minutes. Are there any? And we have this kind of game plan, written out and whatnot. But is there anything in particular that you're really hoping that we go over today in the scheme, the with the importance of practicing? Is there anything that you'd like us to go over? Please let us know in the comments before we
Yes.
officially start.
Absolutely. And hello, Monty and Clay.
Oh,
And also Nettie Lisa. I see that you are watching us. We've got some folks from all the way, all around the world. Lisa's, I know you're in Australia, and Mona is in, I believe, in Singapore. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And also being a part of our online school as well. Oh my gosh, Karen, hi. It's awesome. Thank you guys so much. We love seeing all of your comments. So please definitely keep commenting and letting us know just some of the various things that you'd like to learn, as well as just you can even just say hey or share some thoughts with us. We always read all of the comments and we try to answer you guys. Either I'll try to type or hopefully we can get to it in the video session. So, and I totally understand about getting overwhelmed with practice. That's part of why we're doing this session. Is so many people ask us, well, how do you even know what to practice? How do you compartmentalize so that you can figure out? Because you can look at it and go, oh, it's just too much, and then you just don't play, or you'll just play things that you know. So it's really, really it can be really daunting and hard to figure out practice. So that's part of why we're all here. And I just want to say some more hellos. Hey, Graham. Hey, Mia. Hey, Doug. Thank you guys so much. And Robin, thank you guys so much for joining us. This is very exciting.
no.
Now, somebody just asked a really good question, which is, do you log what you do in your practice? Sometimes it really depends on what I'm practicing. For example, if I really wanted to learn a technique like claw hammer, I would actually log everything that I've done so that I can kind of go back. If I am trying to learn more about music theory or arranging or doing something that's very sort of mentally heavy, I definitely will log that practice because I'm sure I'll forget something in that as well. But I may not necessarily log every single time I practice, just because there are some things that I don't feel I need to write down. But if I know it's something like something very complicated that I need, or a brand new technique, I actually may log what I do just to ensure that I continue to do it correctly. So, excellent question, for sure.
Yeah, and so again, some of these things is good to kind of get in the comments, and we'll make sure when we get to that section in today's stream that we'll approach this. Where do I get the pill to improve my? Uh, $20. I have a magic bean that you can
Yes,
eat that will make you
I thought it was a cheese ball.
or a cheese ball.
That'll be the magic
No
thing.
practice necessary.
Yes, just eat these and you will play just like me.
Oh, you might see some things come up for next year's April Fools. So we have some things
In the
in
works.
the works.
Yes.
Um, and a lot of things that we're going to be going over today is really, um, being as efficient with our time, because a lot of us don't have the hours and hours to really spend just kind of mastering all these different things. So we'll kind of talk about how to really think about different things to pay attention to when you are practicing, so that you are kind of doing more than just one thing. And part of it is just being more aware, being be
Yeah.
able to focus on all the other things that you can be doing while you're doing that one exercise or that one part of the song. So a lot of these things do cross over, and they get tied into everything else. So we'll kind of take that apart a little bit today as well.
Absolutely. It can be really daunting. So, yeah, I'm glad that everybody is excited to chat with us about it, and we love again, we love all of the different comments and questions that people are asking, and also the folks that are just saying hi. So thank you guys so much.
And thanks, Monty. Sound wise, I am running a Rode mic. I forget the one. What is this one?
Hey, Dan Nichols and
Uh,
James.
the NT2A into the Canon C100 Mark II on this camera here. And Sarah, we're using a Zoom, an H6.
Oh yeah, you can't see it in the frame because you're there.
Right there. That tiny little thing
Oh
there.
yeah. Oh yeah, you can see me behind Craig. Hi.
And that's attached to the DSLR for her camera. But other than that, it's actually going straight through these cameras, coming into. We are using for the video side of it as well. We have one of these guys that's currently attached. Let's see if I can get that to focus. Let me hide my face. I don't know if that's working. We have one of these guys. It's a Blackmagic mini recorder, Ultra Studio little guy, HDMI to Thunderbolt 2 going into the computer. And then for this guy and the iPad, we have a Cam Link that we're going straight from those sources to the computer as well. So if we need to, we can have a third screen up with the iPad as a live feed as well.
Hi, Kelvin. It's great to see you,
Oh, hi,
as well as
Calvin.
Daniel. Well, actually, two
Awesome.
Dans.
Yeah.
The two
Awesome.
Dans.
Good to see you guys.
And Judy. Hi. The somebody asked, "Are we coming to the East Coast anytime soon?" We were just in Vermont for the Vermont Harvest Festival. It was a blast, and we're looking forward to watching that festival grow. For next year, there is a possibility that we might tour. We'll see. But one thing, we will be on the eastern side of the United States because we'll be at the Allegheny Ukulele Soiree in Pennsylvania. We had so much fun last year, so we were super excited when they invited us back. But currently, that's the only thing on the calendar at the moment that has us heading east.
Yeah.
But that could potentially
Yeah, we
change.
purposely tried to be a little bit more selective. We don't want to travel as much next year compared to the last 3 years, pretty much. So we will be taking some time off and focusing on the writing, focusing on our school.
And live streams like this.
Yeah, we miss doing things, fun things like this. So we'll be traveling less. But we will try to make the most of some of these festivals, especially on the East Coast, by doing maybe a tour around it, or sometime through the year we'll do what we can.
So Clay just asked the question of how can you make practice feel more like goofing off? Well,
Oh, it's always well here, like it that kind of thing we'll get into a little bit, but part of anything in life, like we always learn right away when we're small, like chores. If you turn it into a game of some sort, all of a
oh
sudden it
yeah.
becomes a lot more fun. Same kind of thing here. There's so many things that is just a slight twist of
Yeah.
perception, a slight kind of change in mentality where, if you consider it work, it will always feel like work. But when you give yourself a challenge, or make it some sort of gameplay with it, then all of a sudden it becomes much more engaging and fun. So, that's a really good thing to bring up. So we'll talk about that a little bit more as well. Um,
Absolutely.
but before we get into like the meat and potatoes of today's stream, I wanted Sarah to kind of go over a new song so we can
Oh yeah,
play a
play a
little
little
bit
bit.
and also gain some new techniques.
Yes, and I also want to say hi to Tommy and Kenneth and my Aunt Lisa. Hi, Lisa. It's good to see you. Thanks for joining us. I hope you have an ukulele. And hi, Steve, as well as Robin. It's awesome. We love I almost wore my Steel City Euchre shirt. I'm actually wearing my the greatest uke. The Great Uke State, Michigan shirt. It's one of my favorites, but I do wear the Steel City Euchre shirt a lot. So, all right.
Great to see you guys coming in. And
Yay! Welcome,
I'm
everybody.
glad YouTube is staying healthy for us tonight.
I know. Yes.
All right, let's play a little bit.
Okay. So, I just kind of want to go over the classic. It's from a classic Hapa tune. It is called Howley Hula, and was written in 1927, though I think the copyright for the song is 28. R. Alex Anderson wrote it. And a really funny thing, when we performed it once in San Diego at the San Diego Arts Festival, there was a young woman who came up to me and actually said, my grandfather wrote that song. And I couldn't believe it. I thought that was just the coolest thing. So, his family's still around, and he was a very prolific writer. He wrote a lot of Hapa tunes, actually. So, anyway, let's go ahead, and we're gonna do sort of a basic rundown of the tune first, and then we'll kind of mix it up a little bit and add some extra chords to it. So it should be a lot of fun. Sorry, if you see me look up, I'm actually looking at, there's a nice big screen for me so I can read your comments and things, just so that if you mention something, I can quickly answer. So, do we have the music? All right. So, the song we're going to do in the key of F, just for starters, we'll start with just a Hawaiian vamp. And for those of you that don't know, in the key of F, the Hawaiian vamp is going to be a G7. So you've got your G7 open to 1, 2. And then that will be 2 beats. Then you'll have a C7, and that's just open, open, open 1. And that's for 2 beats. And then you have F for 4 beats. Again. And you get to do that 2 times in a row. So it sounds like this. Let's do it again. Right? Now, if you know those same chords in another position, totally feel free to play those, because, I mean, this is one of the ways that you can make your practice fun. If you're at a play-along, play they'll play a new version of at least one of those chords, and then you're practicing a new inversion, which is pretty awesome. So let's go through. You'll notice that I have a box chart next to my head, and that each box represents 4 beats. So if you see 2 chords in a box, that means that there's 2 beats for one and 2 beats for the other one. So let's start off with that vamp, the G7, C7, and F. 1, 2, 3, 4, G7, C7, and F. One more time. When I hear the strains of that sweet Hallelujah, stealing from afar off guitar, and they know when Lily ooh ay makes you sway in the moonlight. I know the reason why fair Hawaii haunts you so. C7, the lovely blue of sky, and the sapphire of ocean, the flashing white of clouds, and the waves foaming crest, the many shades of green from the plain to the mountain, with all the brightest hues of the rainbows. We are blessed. Let's vamp out. Just G7, C7, and then the F. So for now, there are more verses to the song, but hopefully some of you guys tried out some different positions and things. But I would love to chat with you about, if you have a song like this, you'll notice that you get to hold F for a really long time in the song, or F to F7, right? You also hold a G7 for a long time and a C7 for a long time. So I kind of want to just take us through and have us change some things. The inspiration for the changes that we are making actually comes from an incredibly beautiful version that is done by Raiatea Helm, actually, and Brian Tolentino is on that album. We're actually picking him up from the airport tonight. Because he's coming to San Diego. So any of you San Diego guys who haven't signed up, or LA, because you can come on down, who haven't signed up for his workshop on Sunday, definitely come on down. And then, but anyway, but that's sort of what inspired us for rearranging the song. So the first thing that I want to do is actually change up the vamp. So we've got, you can do the traditional Hawaiian vamp, that sounds great, but you could also maybe do sort of a walk up and then walk back down, which is what we've got right next to my head. So what you can see, oh, hi James, I'll make sure to tell Brian hello for you for sure. Absolutely. So what I've got here is you have the F chord for 2 beats, then you have a G minor chord, and then all we're going to do with that G minor is move it up 1, 2 frets, and we still have an open G string. This is a much easier way to play A minor 7 for those of you that don't like this crazy one with the crazy bars. So you can do this one, and that's 2 beats, and then you go back down to G minor. So let's try to kind of practice this in a sort of infinite loop, if you will. So it's 2 beats of all of those chords, remembering that that A minor 7 is just the G minor shape, but going 1, 2 frets higher. Let's give it a try. 1, 2, 3, 4, F, G minor, A minor, move it down, back to the F, G minor, A minor, minor, move it back down, F, G minor, A minor, that F, we'll do it one last time, and let's stop on the A minor. So if you're wanting to, what we're going to end up doing in our song for the vamp is actually going through that progression twice, but on the very last time, we are going to stop on that A minor, and I'll call it out, so don't worry. Don't worry too much, but you can already hear it adds a slightly different feel. You've got this really nice upward and then downward movement going on with this piece, which is really, really cool. The other thing that also kind of reminds Craig and I of is Sesame Street a little bit. A little bit. So that's our vamp. Another thing that we're actually going to look at and change is we are going to make, there was a section of the tune that had an F chord followed by an F7. So one thing that we are going to do is actually to create a little bit more tension, we are going to make that F chord that was just before the F7 a suspended chord. And then when we resolve to that F7, it's going to feel really good. So a suspended chord, if it says suspended 4 or just says the word suspended, what is going to happen is that the third note of the chord, so if we are playing in the key, if we are playing in F7, the third note, the first note is F, G, A, the third note is an A note, is going to get replaced with the fourth note, which in the scale, which is a half a step away. So if you look at the diagram, you will notice that instead of an F7, this middle finger is going to come up ever so slightly to the 5th fret. So you have 5, 5, 1, and 5. And Mia, to answer your question about the A minor 7 position, could that work for C6? Why, yes, it could, because those chords are related to each other. And absolutely, they're a lookalike, and you could totally use that chord instead.
So every note in that A minor 7 is actually in a C6. But in this case, because we're kind of having that walking up feeling, especially for your bass player, we have to call it an A minor 7.
Yeah.
You wouldn't say a G minor going to a C back to G minor. It's going to sound completely different if that's so that in that case, so you're absolutely right, but it really does have to be titled an A minor 7, but it could be as a C6 shape.
Right. If you're in the context of C, you could make it. It could be a C6. Blah, blah, blah. Sorry. So, but back to our suspended chord. Excellent question. Thanks for asking. So, what we're going to be doing is 4 beats of the suspended, and then you're going to play the F7. So, we are, and you are correct, James. I meant the 3rd fret. I'm so sorry. So, for that F suspended, it's 3, 3, 1, 3. Thank you for catching that. And suspended chords are gorgeous, and they really help enhance songs and transitions. So there's that. Let's move on to the next thing that we just want to kind of show you, and that would be there's the G7 that lasts.
And actually, before we move on from that, one of the things that we talk about a lot is the idea of violin fingers compared to piano fingers. And in this particular case, it's very, very easy to see. And I'm going to switch screens for just a second. But going from, let's say, just a regular F7 shape. So here's my F7. Now, because I'm resting in that notch there, and I have that angle coming forward, this shape becomes exponentially harder if I was to do it like piano fingers, where my hands and fingers are kind of going straight up and down. So these guys really do fight for that same lane, and it forces my thumb to go in the back, which creates my wrist to pop out. And again, there's no leverage there. So again, it's this beautiful kind of angled shape starting from that corner that goes down. So violin fingers compared to piano fingers, and I have my thumb resting on top, and I can play this without my thumb. And so again, part of it, the thumb is just there to help kind of position. So especially when we go to the suspended, where we have three fingers fighting over that same lane, you're
Yes.
going to have a lot more success having more of an angle compared to all of them trying to fight over that same lane by going to piano fingers.
Yeah.
So again, the idea of violin and just going back and forth like this from that suspended to that F7 is going to be very helpful again to isolate these different finger muscles and get that nice tone that we want with very minimal effort. Okay.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for that, Craig. That was excellent, excellent. Especially when you've got a chord where you're having a lot of fingers on the same fret. It's really good to think ahead and think about hand position so that you can make sure you can get all your fingers in there. So the next set of chords that I mentioned were the G7. So we've got, G7 here, but you could also play G7 somewhere else. Some of you guys might know the G7 that looks like the F7 that's 1, 2 on the 3rd fret that's closed. But just in case you didn't know, there's another G7 you can play that actually looks really similar to the first position G7. So this one, if you take this G7 and go up 1, 2 to the 3rd fret, so your index is on the 3rd fret, and then you take these two fingers that are on the 4th fret and stretch them up to the 5th, that is also G7. Sometimes Craig and I refer to this as big G7. So there's little G7 and then up 2 frets, big G7.
Gigantic G7.
Oh yeah,
actually.
sorry, gigantic G7. So little G7, move up 2 frets and spread them. Giant G7, back down. So let's try, just for practice, let's try playing 4 beats of the regular G7 and then 4 beats of the gigantic G7. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Regular G7. Move it up. Go back down. Move it up. I actually don't lift my fingers. Move them down. I'm letting my fingers slide up the fretboard, actually. Because I find if I do this, I lose where I'm at on the fretboard. But if I slide, I can feel what fret number I'm on. Back down. It also creates a pretty sound, too. Bring it back up. All right, I think that's good for now.
And a couple hints on that as well.
Yeah.
A lot of times when we try to transition to that, we kind of get to the 3rd and then extend. If we want to work on the speed, I actually want you to aim for that 5th fret dot and just feel like you're dragging that index. Because if you can get this guy out, chances are, if you're kind of dragging that index along, it's going to settle on that 3rd fret.
Yeah.
So part of it is making sure these guys get to that 5th fret on time, especially when you're going faster. And as Sarah said too, you can move that whole shape. And as you see here, I still have that violin fingers going up. And this is such a small movement.
Yeah.
But it's so versatile. And for those of you who are wondering, you could actually, what the shape that's really riding off of is if this is our F7 shape, we can move up 2 frets. And that would also be G7. The reason why the other shape works is if we were to take this finger off, it would be an open G, which would still fit in that chord as a G7. We're missing one extra note, but you'd be hard pressed to really hear the difference. So that's why we can go from this shape to here instantly and have a nice movement instead of going from here to that closed version there. But that's really what it's kind of riffing off of, is that shape there.
Yeah. And the other thing too about that is the only time you're really going to notice the difference between this closed G7 and the open one is that if you have a low G, you'll actually notice it and hear it. But if you have a high G, you'll be totally fine. All right, so the next one that I mentioned was C7. You're holding C7 for a long time. So why don't we actually have 2 different versions of a C7. So the extra version that I gave you is just the one on the 3rd fret. It should kind of remind you of a B flat 7 perhaps, or a B7. So you bar the 3rd fret, and then your middle finger will be on the C string on the 4th fret. So this is another place you can play your C7, and it sounds great. Now, those of you that have trouble with bar chords, one thing to think about is don't squeeze super hard with the bar chord. You'll notice that when I'm holding this C7, you can totally see my thumb, and I am playing, and it sounds just fine. So what I am doing is something that Craig and I actually, I say Craig and I, Craig is the one that actually goes over it in our Artist Works online school, where we talk about using your own body's leverage so that you can do the chords by using your own body's leverage, pulling into yourself and using this arm to brace. But let's just practice going through the C7. So we'll do the 1st fret. Actually, let's start on the 3rd fret C7 first, and then we'll go down to the 1st fret C7. So nice and slow. One of my favorite things is tempo del lerno. So 1, 2, 3, 4. C7, C7. Bring us back up. C7, C7 again. C7, C7. Now you'll notice something that I tend to do is when I'm going from this C7, it's like my index slides down the A string, and I'm going back to supporting with my index. Back up, we'll do it one more time. C7, C7, somewhere else. Awesome. So I think now we can go through the song again. We didn't write up the next positions, but feel free to try the 2nd position chords, remembering to, when we went over playing the F, G minor, A minor, just moving it up 2 frets, because we don't have the chord diagrams, but I am positive that you guys will totally remember. Also, you can look at my hands as well. And also, I just saw that Milo is here. What up, Milo? It's good to see you. Those of you that don't know Milo, he actually is our bassist who lives in Portland, Oregon right now. Awesome. And thank you guys for letting us know about the echo. Craig, I think, was able to fix it. So I think we are good to go. Yay. Awesome. So, oh my gosh, how cool. Thank you for joining us from Brazil. That's awesome. Sweet. So, we'll go through the vamp, which is just the F, G minor to the new A minor 7. If something goes awry and you decide to play a regular A minor, it'll still sound great. So don't worry too much about it, okay? So we've got that. We have the F suspended. Oh, Teco, I just realized you're here. Aloha. So we've got that new vamp. We've got the suspended chord. You have a couple of you have 2 G7s you could play. You also have a couple of C7s you could play. And I will try to call things out as we go, and it should be a lot of fun. So we'll do the similar kind of pace. So we'll start with the vamp. 1, 2, 3, 4. F, G minor, move it up 2 frets, back down. F, G minor, stop on the A minor. When I hear the strains of that sweet Aleikoki. Here's that vamp. G minor, A minor, back to G minor, stealing from afar, off guitar, pen 8. Get ready for the suspended. Make it a regular F7. When Lily, ooh, go to giant G7. I know the reason. 3rd fret, C7. Why fair Hawaii haunts you so? The lovely blue of sky and the sapphire of ocean. G minor, move it up, bring it back down. The flashing white of clouds and the waves, suspended foaming crest. The many shades of green from the plain to the mountain. So I'm going to move up to the 3rd fret, G7. And then C7, 3rd fret. Why fair Hawaii? C7. Haunts you so. And we'll stop right here. Nice. So you can hear how the song didn't completely change, but we just added a little bit more interest in it and some more movement. And there was, instead of playing F during measures 3 and 4, we added that really cool vamp. Instead of playing a regular F on the 2nd line, 3rd measure, we've added that suspended chord, and then, adding a couple different G7s, a couple different C7s. It really gives it a slightly different vibe. And of course, we were playing it at tempo do lerno. You would probably play it a little bit faster, but you get the idea. It really can add some cool movement, and then and just helps you change up the arrangement a bit.
I'll tell you what, let's try and do it at speed and they can follow along, and then at the very end we'll actually do it as we would perform it. But for now
and I'll play it on the different
and so for now we'll play it at speed just to kind of see what it goes. I'll do a couple little variations, but again, these are very just small little changes that we can do to create a much more rich arrangement.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll do it at speed, and then at the end we'll do it as a performance, I think.
Yeah. And so those of you that are watching me, I'm going to just do the chords that are written up here, but if you watch Craig, feel free to check out some of the cool he'll end up doing some different and very cool things,
Just
I'm
a
sure.
little bit. Just a little bit. And not compared to, we'll do it later.
Yeah. All right. 1, 2. The vamp first. F, G. Move it up. Back down. F. And stop. When I hear the strains of that sweet Aleko stealing from a far off guitar, then I know when Lily makes you sway in the moonlight. I know the reason why fair Hawaii haunts you so. The lovely blue of sky and the sapphire of ocean, the flashing white of clouds and the waves forming crest, the many shades of green to the plain, to the mountain, with all the brightest hues of the rainbows, we are blessed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of these shapes, especially up here, are the same exact shapes. So it's just, looks exactly like that C7 here, but just on the 10th fret, and that'll be our G7. And walk it down. C7 with a 9 on top. So a lot of, things that you guys can already do, I think, just knowing where to put some of these extra fingers. It always makes a big difference, but it's just these tiny little elements that can really add to some of that depth in the arrangement.
That's right. Fairy dust. Should I
Okay.
switch ukes? I gotta make sure this is. I gotta play that.
Oh, we'll perform at the end.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So yeah, we'll make them sit through
Woo!
the actual.
And then they can play along with us. Awesome. It's so great to see so many of you guys here joining us. Thank you guys so much for taking some time out of your Thursday night and playing with us. And feel free to keep asking us questions and to just keep sticking with us. Craig's going to take over now with some more really awesome practice tips and things. And I'll interject every now and then. I'm not going anywhere.
All right, now, so like we said, that today is going to be focusing on practicing some of the things that we look at when we practice, and a lot of it boils down to kind of prioritizing. So the first thing we tell a lot of our students is create goals. Start with your long-term goals. Like for your next year, this is something I did growing up too. Is that next year I want to be able to, let's say, play guava jam comfortably. So I would look at that song and I would say, okay, if that's my long-term goal, I want to set some short-term goals. So that includes like really working out some of the hard sections, or memorizing one particular phrase at a time. Um, yeah, so a lot of it is again fine tuning. Every time you pick up the ukulele, have be deliberate. Be deliberate what you play and what you practice, because yes, it's very very easy to just pick up and play songs that you already know, but as you progress and want to push forward, it does become an issue because we don't necessarily learn uh, uh, like either new techniques or just creating a different way of playing. So you end up playing that same song that one way all the time, or that group of 10 songs the same way all the time. So part of it is, again, setting your long-term goals, and finding little things to help you get there. For example, some other goals that I want you to think about is, when I first started, I could play or I could sing. I couldn't really do both. So one of the things that one of my goals was to be able to play and sing at the same time. All right, that's half of the fun. So little tips on that, if that's one of your goals, is focus on one or the other first. One of the things that we highly suggest is learn the chords first, be able to kind of play through it, and maybe just even hum along. But even if you can't hum along at the same time because of the rhythm, or just it's a tricky song, then record yourself playing through, let's say, even a verse. We all have smartphones at this point.
True.
We have QuickTime on Mac for free. I forget what the Windows equivalent is. But record yourself just playing through the verse. And then when you play it back, try to sing along with your playing. The reason why that's so important is because everyone plays a little bit differently. You have your own thing there, but recording yourself and playing along with yourself, you're going to hear also the nuances that you're also playing, how you're playing it. So you're going to figure out where things lie in the measure. A couple other hints is, in my lyric sheet, I would circle the downbeat of each start of each verse, or each line actually. So I know that I could come in on my downstrum on that one word, and that would lead me into it. Little hints like that, or I would like have a big dash when there is a pause, or I would break up, especially the Hawaiian numbers. I had to kind of break apart and create these little segments so I knew how to phrase it. I knew how it landed within the measures themselves.
Yeah, and the other thing I also want to add to that too is I found if I recorded myself playing just the chords, like, and I would usually do it to a metronome just to ensure it was in time, but I would put it in the car and I would run errands and sing along with it, because then I was also getting used to the sound of what my instrument's going to sound like while I'm singing. And that was super helpful. It also meant it's really hard to try to memorize lyrics, memorize the chords, memorize the melody, and whatever strumming and rhythm you're doing. So Craig and I are really big on, I say, work one hand at a time. And you can also take that with like work one instrument at a time. So, work on just the uke stuff for a while and then, record it and then work on this instrument as well, because I find that that is extremely helpful. And the other thing I also recommend that Craig mentioned earlier is, thinking about your goals, write them down. I actually used to write down, I would have 5 goals a month, and I didn't reach all of them. Don't get me wrong, but I would have 5 goals a month, but I would read them out loud to myself before bed. I had them on a note card, and that was my bookmark. And I would read my goals to myself, and then I would go to sleep. But doing that also really helped those goals stay in the forefront.
No, I just switched to thing.
Sorry.
Okay. I was reading Mia's thing about what if your long-term goal is to be able to sing and play an hour gig.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, that is a really great question, and
Yes.
part of it is a lot of times, especially when we first start, we bite off more than we can chew. I've definitely started doing gigs when I probably shouldn't
Me
have
too.
been, and that's just the way it goes. But
Yep.
sometimes you need to be thrown in the deep end a bit to really get how things work. Like for
Mm-hmm.
example, in our set isn't actually that many songs. We timed it out that with talking.
Yeah,
Um,
true. Because talking, if you have a gig where you're talking,
mhm.
that takes up a chunk of time
So we averaged about 5 to 6 minutes with some talking and the whole song
per
typically.
song.
So broken that down in an hour, that's not that many per se,
Mm-hmm.
compared to when you're playing in like the kind of group jams, you fly through those
That's
songs. You just
true.
go
Or
back to
if you've,
back to back to back to back, and you
yeah.
can get through like 30 songs. So
Yeah, or if you have a restaurant gig, like I had a restaurant gig where I had to play for 2.5 hours, and like because you aren't talking your background music, that's a lot of tunes actually. But you can usually have a notebook for that.
and but my thing too is this is leads into the next section as well. Don't try to master that entire set if you're not comfortable with each song to begin with, uh, because again, the whole thing about doing too much at once, that's going to be a repetitive theme that we're going to be talking about, because um, we can only handle so much. If we're trying to memorize 10 songs that we're not even familiar with, or not that comfortable with yet, it's going to be a lot harder to get all of that down compared to just spending time on mastering one song at a time. That's always going to be more beneficial, and it's going to retain a lot easier as well. So I, really focus on, instead of learning through 10 songs, do you want to stumble through them, or do you want to have like one song really really good? So even if the other songs aren't up to snuff, you have at least one under your belt that you can always pull from, and that and build upon. Um, a lot goes into also, like, if your goal is to be able to play off the page,
Right.
something we always talk about is start looking at the patterns, start looking at, okay, for all the verses in the song, even for Hallelujah, it was all the same chords. There's no chorus. It was just verse, 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 verse. So part of it is isolating that pattern and just practicing over and over. If there was a
Mm-hmm.
chorus, then you'd practice the chorus by itself for a while just to get that down. Be able to mix and match like your verse structure, your choruses, and your bridge, so that
Mm-hmm.
when you do make a mistake or if you get lost, you can come back in instead of thinking you have to start from the very beginning of the song in your head again, trying to catch up to where you are. That's an issue that we all kind of started with, is that we would practice each song from the top every single time. So then when a mistake happened, we had to kind of scroll through everything and find that place to jump into, compared to being
Mm-hmm.
comfortable with each individual section. And again, one of the biggest parts that we want to sound the best is the ending, right? Because that's the
Yeah.
lasting impression. That's what people are going to really remember, compared to um, uh, being, usually we're really good in the beginning because that's where we start practicing from. So again, part
Right.
of it is start from the ending, work your way backwards, go from the
Mm-hmm.
ending to the verse, the chorus, but just be comfortable being able to mix and match. Um, and to me, that's gonna help an incredible amount to get these songs down get off the
Yeah.
page. And I know Sarah as well. One of the things that if there's a piece of paper in front of me, even if I have the song memorized like crazy, if there's a page in front of me, I will read it.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
It,
We
it is.
all do that. And it's like, I know the song. Why am I looking at this piece of paper? So, yeah.
Yeah, so one of those things is try to just play without. Even if I'm just gonna use it just in case.
Yeah.
Honestly, you're gonna be kind of sight reading through, and it's gonna be a distraction. That means you're not making eye contact. That means you're singing down instead of up. So these tons of little things of why it is so great to try to get off of the page,
Yeah.
and it does force you to be more deliberate with your practice
Mm-hmm.
as well when you're trying to memorize it. And again, memorization, just memorize one tiny part at a time, even if it's just one line and then one verse and then one
Right.
chorus. Take the time to memorize each section and get that down
Yeah.
and get comfortable.
And the other thing too that I wanted to add to that is that when you when you're going through and memorizing songs, Craig had mentioned look for patterns because there are many times, especially pop music or even jazz standards, they tend to have a lot of there's certain movement that just is very typical for those pieces. So many times, if you take the time to really analyze a song before you get started, you'll actually start to find that you're like, oh, this is just like this other song. Okay, so then you can find ways of remembering parts of songs by thinking, oh, okay, this is rhythm changes, but the bridge is different. The bridge does this or that. I find that super helpful to be able to do that, and also I find for myself Craig's advice about starting from the end and then be able to play different parts of the song out of order, especially helpful for when I'm working on instrumentals,
Mm.
because I don't have as much of a hard time with this with singing songs and having feeling like I need to go from the beginning. But if there's an instrumental that I have that's actually like a an arrangement versus a spontaneous solo, that is when I really have to hunker down and start practicing random parts of the song so that I won't have to start from the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Do you memorize to the point where you don't have to look at the fretboard? Um, yes and no, because it kind of depends, right? If I've got a song that has a lot of leaping, for example, like if I've like something like that, right? I am definitely going to still look at my fretboard, even though I know that stuff. I could do, most of it. See, I missed, right? So it really depends on what kind of movement it is if I'm going to actually be able to memorize my fretboard. Yeah, good question.
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, a lot. It all comes down to context with that kind of stuff too, because there are some things,
True.
where you should be able to get to your basic chords without really looking. And again, if that's an issue, part of it is finding the progression. Let's say F, D minor, B flat, and C. You should be able to watch, stuff on Netflix and do this progression over and over. And then when you learn something new, you try it again. But part of it, part of why we try to challenge students to not look is that you start to pay attention more of what's really going on. So the D minor, I'm just adding that ring finger. And I can hit that all day long knowing that it's right under my
Right.
middle. And then I can swivel to that B flat because my index is already on the first fret. Then I can slide up 2 frets, so I know exactly what those 2 frets feel like. But if I miss, I'll just practice going for that transition over and over, because each time that I do to get that feeling, and again being deliberate at understanding what I'm feeling and how it's being played, that gets stored in your body, and you can pull that out at any time. So all these things do overlap, but again, part of it is being deliberate. Part of it is
Yeah.
being taking the time to go over. Like for example, in a song, going from F to C is not the same as C to F. There are little nuances that are different going back and forth between certain chords. So every time we learn a new song, we actually look at the page first and kind of go through the chord progression and see if there's
Right.
anything kind of wonky, and if there's a certain progression that's giving us an issue, a certain transition, we'll just practice that transition over and over until it
Mm-hmm.
feels comfortable, and then try to go through a song. Because again, if we're not comfortable with those transitions, there's no way we can play the song
Mm-mm.
uh, remotely close to where we need it to be. And once that foundation comes apart and we stop to change a
Mm-hmm.
chord, the train keeps going, and we're gone, right? So a lot of it is really taking the time to look at these transitions, see if there's anything wonky, and kind of isolating that, and just do that for 5 to 10 minutes straight, and that's all you do. And
Mm-hmm.
again, doing any one thing for 10 to 15 minutes straight
Ooh,
feels like forever.
forever.
But it's gonna be there. It's gonna be,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna feel mastered about that, and it will always be there from then on. So part of the
Mm-hmm.
time is taking that kind of time away from just playing through a song.
Yeah. And I wanted to answer Dan's question about playing. Should you consistently play the same instrument in your practice? I feel yes, because there are going to be it. Well, okay. I'm not saying you must only play the same sized instrument all the time, okay? But if there's a particular piece that you know you're going to be playing on a tenor size instrument, I would definitely spend my practice time only on the tenor size instrument. Just because, yes, there are muscle memory things. And if you're switching constantly between like concert and tenor, you will notice a difference, and you'll notice that it's going to be a little bit harder for you to be able to gain that muscle memory because you're constantly
Mm-hmm.
switching scale. So yeah.
Now on the flip side, the talking about, like, even different makes and different models a tenor size, they will feel different. So every time you start investing in a different kind of feel, you will be playing differently. When especially as you're kind of pushing on learning certain things,
Mm-hmm.
you want to get to a certain point before you start kind of mixing it up with different instruments, even if it's the same size and everything, because again, it will feel different. So
Mm-hmm.
all that, the nuances, like for example, it takes us a little while to kind of get the feel for an instrument, even if it's the same size. But there are, neck size differences. The action is different, and we can't just jump on and play exactly how we would at a concert with like a random instrument. It would sound close, but it wouldn't really feel the same.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Jack had a great question. What advice can you give for memorizing chord shapes, their importance? I tend to be lazy and go back to first position chords. Um, send us an email at chimazel@gmail.com, and Sarah will write that in the comments. Send us an email about asking about chord shapes. We have a very nice diagram that
Mm-hmm.
is all color coded and everything, that goes from C, in the C position, C in the B flat position,
Mm-hmm.
C in the F, C in the E. And again, the importance about being able to play up and down the neck in the different shapes is because you can create movement, and you can also create different melody lines because of the difference there. Um, and again, especially when you're playing in groups, it's nice to have that diversity. Even using drop baby drop, for example. Drop baby drop, drop all your love on me, drop drop baby drop 'cause I'm hungry. So those were just different E7s. But again, these were shapes you already know. Like this looks like that F7 shape just without the index. This looks like a C7 or D7 shape. And this looks like that other, like a B7 shape. But you can create this movement. And also, when you get into chord melody, is very, very, very important to know your
Yeah.
different shapes, as Sarah can really attest to.
Yes, that's actually the key to chord melody is playing in other positions. So, and one thing that I used to do because I found that I really wanted to be able to play up the neck and stuff, but I wasn't sure how to practice it. I actually would practice at jams. So I would take a chord a week because we would tend to play like either in the key of C or the key of F at this particular group, and we tended to play Hawaiian tunes, and so you play a lot of the same chords all night. So then I would just change it up and play a different chord, maybe two chords if I was feeling particularly, smart that day or felt like I could make the jumps. So I would do that, and I found it to be really, really helpful. And then my practice still felt fun because I was at the jam having a good time. And if I messed up, it didn't matter because no one could hear me anyway because it's jam. And then also, Teco had a really good question of like, how do you choose what song to play? One thing that I tend to do, oh yeah, and also this kind of also applies to the shorthand question as well. I actually lay out my practice sessions like this. I typically will have 15-minute bursts. Okay. I rarely get to play, both Craig and I rarely get to play for like an hour because there's always something we're working on or we're traveling. So I tend to do like warm up exercise. Then I make myself work on really difficult transitions, hard stuff. And I'll spend, a solid 5 minutes only working on things that really give me trouble. And it might just be one or two transitions, but still 5 minutes is a long time to work on something that's kind of small. Then I'll work on new repertoire for a little bit of songs that I'm trying to memorize. And then I usually end with something fun that I know. But for me, and that's just sort of a general like how I do my practice time. Sometimes I don't get to the fun songs. Sometimes I end up just doing the hard transitions. But I think that starting with the hard stuff is really important. So, but end with something fun if you can, because that will leave you feeling good about the practice and like I had a great time. And I actually kind of write. I actually have a little checklist for myself sometimes. It's not a log, but just I'll do a little shorthand of like, this is the stuff I want to focus on today, and I make myself a list, and then eventually I get to the things on the list.
Yeah, and to go back to Jack's thing about
Yeah.
advice to memorizing the chord shapes. Again, the great thing about that handout that we'll send you is that it literally is going from different shapes that you already know. So, and part of it is, again, sitting in front of the TV, watching Netflix, how to play, C chord, 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 over and over and over, so that, again, it was there. But, even just going back and forth between the two different positions, and then
Yeah.
F, 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 F. Again, part of it is just putting that time in. And the great thing is, you don't need to just sit there and stare and focus, focus, focus. Like a lot of this stuff, you just have to do physically like 1,000 times in a row, and then it's there. Um, because honestly, I went through one chord per day for like a week, and just the different versions of it. And after that, it really was in knowing how to get from one shape to the other, because it's always in that same cycle. It's there and it was done.
Yeah.
The part of it was just that was all I did that week. Right.
Well, and then another question was do you have exercise patterns that go through first, second, third positions? Yes, we have some on our online school actually through ArtistWorks, and there are certain workshops where I teach, and actually Craig I think also goes through some of them as well. I tend to do those scale exercises where you you go through like B flat, for example, and I go through all the shapes that way, linking them. But I tend to do it with minor sevens, minor seven, major six, and dominant seven chords, because those are the ones that I tend to use more frequently than the regular triads, but you can also do that with the regular triads as well. And basically what I did was I did B flat because it gave me the most amount of neck, and I would go through and say, okay, B flat, and then add the next note in the scale, and then move up to the next position. That's right, it's the fifth fret, etc. And so I would move that up. And then I could also go backwards. So I could do, and then I could do a single note if I wanted. But doing that and feeling that relationship between the chords is an exercise that I used to do regularly. And it also kind of helped me get the key in my ear as well. But again, that is something that we actually do have in our online school. So thanks for asking that question.
And a couple things, that I know you guys are gonna not be happy with this answer, but scales are so important.
Yes.
Whether you're interested in doing soloing or fills
Mm-hmm.
or chord melody, it's all about scales. All the fancy stuff are just selected notes chosen from
Yeah,
that
from the
scale.
scale.
So, and the thing is, I talked about earlier about trying to find different things to focus on when
Mm-hmm.
you're doing something simple. Like, for example, when you're doing your C major scale, once you get really adept at that, then work on your hammer-ons and pull-offs.
Mm-hmm.
So again, a hammer-on is just getting the extra notes from your left hand. So open C, and I'm going to hammer on that left hand. And then the E, I'm going to hit open once, hammer, hammer, 1 and 3, open A, hammer 2, hammer 3. The pull-off is just literally plucking the note with your left hand. So to start, I'm going to prep 3 and 2. I'm going to do my thumb, pull off, 3 and 1 prep, thumb, pull, second fret, thumb, and then pull. Working on hammers and pull off so that when I do apply it differently, that's where we get used to, doing those kind of techniques. We want to be able to isolate these techniques so that we can apply it in so many different ways in our other songs. Because a lot of times when we're learning songs, we learn how to play that one way for that one song, and that's it. So again, we want to be able to mix and match a little bit more using these techniques. And again, scale-wise, when you're moving up etc. Then you can start. Okay, maybe I'll do double picking. I'll do down and ups on each note. But again, these little things throughout on making these challenges, exercise a little more challenging, gives you a chance to kind of focus on 3 to 4 different things. Because another thing to really focus on is the tone that you're getting. You don't want to blaze through these scales, but not really have the tone that you want. You want to build up speed, but you want to make sure that tone maintains where you want it to be. You can focus on dynamics where you start maybe soft, get louder, get soft again, because then we can apply that to it gives us more options, especially when we're doing solos, especially when we're arranging a song that we want a certain feeling to happen. We're not going to just keep it at the same level the entire song. We want to be able to, just like as I'm talking now, to be able to push and pull a little bit to kind of keep you on your toes and be more engaging. This is an extension of your voice, so be able to manipulate it just as you would with your own vocals. Okay, let's see. I would spend time doing like that A minor walk down scale where, I would do a hit, a pull off, and an up down that A minor scale just to get used to it. And then I would mix and match a little bit. And I would never do that for an entire song or a certain fill, but I can apply it in different ways when I solo or create different fills. But that's the point of kind of isolating down what you're actually learning and really focus on those techniques, because then you can, again, utilize them in many, many different ways.
And the other thing, too, to do is when you're practicing those songs, like say you're working on something that you play all the time, try to change it. Like, even if it's something small, like if you were going through and you were playing, C, G, and F, right? So then, and all I did was add a notes. And I added notes from the C scale because I'm in the key of C. So I did C at a 5th fret, which is a D note. And then the G, I added a C note, which is the 3rd fret. just try to change it from what you typically play. You'll be surprised at some of the cool things you might find. Part of my practice time is also just noodling and just kind of like, what does this sound like? What about this? Oh, that sounds terrible. Oh, what about, and so try stuff out on songs that you know really well. Those are the ones to really start experimenting with, because part of why you play music is because you have something to say. And why don't you work on how you would like to say that? You're not just trying to emulate someone else. You are your own musician and you have your own voice, and these are the ways that you can totally find your own voice. So takes noodle. Also, somebody mentioned, they'll play along with the radio. That is an excellent thing to just randomly practice. Sometimes you'll find the key right away that they're in. Sometimes you find it at the very end and the song is over. But it's still really good. That's one of the things that it's just good to practice. Seeing if you can hop in, because that's how we can hop in on a jam. When somebody says, "Oh yeah, we're just gonna play this song," and they don't tell you the key, well, you gotta sit and listen, and then you gotta try to find it. So
All right, now I'm gonna come full circle here, and
yeah.
this is an idea that we kind of borrowed from Aaron Kime of the Quiet American. And one of the most brilliant things is, again, uh, what we started with today was talking about prioritizing, finding your goals. We want to be, there are different paths to get where you want to be, but you
Yeah.
do want to keep moving forward one angle at a time, rather than kind of doing these circles, right? We get distracted and we just kind of loop around and don't really
Yes.
progress. So
Yeah.
find your goals, find the little things that you need to do to get there, whether it's working on muting or worried about, um, your kind of chord library to develop that. But you write them down on an index card, all these smaller goals. You throw them in a hat. Every time you have 15 to 20 minutes available, grab an index card from that hat, and that's all you do for that 15 to 20 minutes. And then the next time you have 15 to 20 minutes, take another card out. And once everything is out, prioritize again, make sure everything is, going as you want it to be, and then throw it back in the hat and start again.
Yeah.
It keeps things a little bit random, a little bit fresh, and again, but it makes you analyze and focus on one thing at a time.
Right.
And really, we want you guys to succeed so bad, and part of
Yeah.
it again is just making the most of your time. And we're not saying that playing through songs is bad. That's not it at all.
No.
Part of it you know still enjoying it, but part of it again, I think Clay brought up earlier, was how do you make practice fun, and part of that
Yeah.
is on you to either give yourself that challenge, or make a game out of it. Get these mini goals, like say I want to be able to play my C scale cleanly in 3 seconds. That wasn't clean, so I'll work toward that. But
Right.
again, give yourself these tiny little things to focus on, or again, um, it just, well, you could say, if I memorize this one song, then I get to buy a new ukulele, or
Well, I was totally gonna say, I used to, as a little kid, when I would practice and do homework, I would give myself like treats. So for example, I didn't get chips very often. For a snack, it was always fruit was what the snack that I was told I could have as a kid. So my dad would sometimes buy chips, and so then I'd take a little stack of Pringles and I'd sit them by my notebook, and I would, every math problem I solved, I could have a chip. And you can do the same thing with your instrument as well, where you're like, okay, if I do this, I can totally have a slice of pie. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, again, find the fun in practice, and if even if it's just those two transitions back and back, it just really challenge yourself to go, maybe I won't look at my hand, and oh, I forgot one key thing that I want to mention about being able to sing and play at the same time. One of the challenges that I like to assign my students is try to maintain a progression, or even if it's just two chords to start, F and D minor, and then pull up the newspaper and see if you can read through some of the text without missing a beat. And this kind of thing is I love doing, because it really does showcase the importance of trying to isolate these two different things at once. But again, the uke has to be steady. If the uke, portion falls apart, everything falls apart. So whether you have a metronome or not, you could if you really want to focus on it. But try to have a conversation or try to read off of a book or read the paper. This is going to help really separate those two things in your mind and being able to really, treat each time you learn a new song in that way where it's going to be a lot easier to kind of get down. But that's a great exercise. I love doing that. I kind of did growing up because I could not play and sing at the same time. It was so hard. But I think we'll end. Should we go full circle and end with?
We can totally do that. There was something I was going to say, and I'm now forgetting it. Oh no, that was an important practice thing. Oh shoot.
And yes, this will be available to watch after the fact as well. We'll make it becomes a different URL, but we'll make sure to share that
update
URL in our mailing list as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
But a special thank you to our Artist Work students who joined tonight.
Yes.
And thank you all for tuning in. We have a ton of fun doing these things.
Oh yeah.
And there will be plenty more next year as well.
I totally know what you mean by I'm too young to forget things. I joke that I have half-simers. It's not full-on Alzheimer's, but I forget stuff all the time, as poor Craig can attest to. There's always so much on my mind, I think. That's why.
Yes, and don't forget to email us for those movable chord shapes. We'll get that to you right away as well.
Absolutely. And the email address is in the chat. But just in case, I'll write it one more time.
At the end. Yeah, we'll write it one more time.
Okay, we'll write it at the end.
And then so we'll end with this song, and
Should
we'll
we
have
put
to
up...
get ready for to pick up Brian.
Oh, that's true.
From the airport,
we got to get him from the airport. Would you
I'll
mind
put
pulling
the
up
chords.
just the fancy one? Now, don't... Craig is going to stay big, I think.
No, cannot.
No, oh, you cannot? Oh, shoot. Yeah. Okay. Well,
it's okay.
Don't watch my hands. I'm playing a different tuning. So... Hold on. Not quite. Alrighty. Here we go. Thank you guys so much for joining us on this live stream. We've had a really wonderful time with you guys.
And yes, this will be archived.
Yep.
But aloha to Germany. We're so excited to be back next year. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yes. We'll be doing, it'll be a Craig and Sarah ukulele retreat in Berlin. We are super, super excited. We've been working on the schedule for it. So it's going to be really, really awesome. So we cannot wait. And thank you guys for joining us. All right, let's play Howly Hula. And we're going to start with that vamp, which is...
Vamp is that second half of that first line.
Yeah, measures 2 and 3.
Remember the slide, that G minor up 2 frets.
Okay, have to think about what tuning I'm in. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4. When I hear the strains of that sweet hallelujah stealing from a far off guitar piano, when Lily makes you sway in the moonlight, I know the reason why fair Hawaii haunts you so. When I hear the strains of that sweet hallelujah stealing from a far off guitar piano, when Lily makes you sway in the moonlight, I know the reason why fair Hawaii haunts you so. The lovely blue of sky and the sapphire of ocean, the flashing white of clouds and the the swish of rain as it sweeps down the valley. I hear the song of wind as it sighs through the trees. I hear the crash of waves on the rocks and the beaches. I hear the hissing surf and the boom of the sea. Craig, you want one? See why scales are important? I love to dance and sing of the charms of Hawaii, and from a joyful heart sing aloha to you. And every note I'll tell of the swell of my islands, for then I know that you'll be in love with them too. For then I know that you'll be in love with them too. Aww.
Well, thank you guys again so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you guys.
And if there's any other questions, or we'd love to answer. So please send us an email.
Yep.
But I think there's a lot of little things that we went over today that should help kind of solidify again how much you can already do. And again, the biggest thing for me to take away is try to master little parts at a time rather than trying to
Yeah.
memorize and master a whole entire song at once. It's going to be much easier, much more efficient that way.
Absolutely.
But thank you guys again so much. Have a great night, and we'll see
Yes.
you soon.
Bye,
Aloha.
guys. Aloha. Yay.